Hey everyone, welcome back to On Purpose, the #1 health podcast in the world. Thanks to each and every single one of you that come back every week to listen, learn, and grow. Now, I know that our community at On Purpose, all of you are activists. Our community is dedicated to making positive change in the world. I know that all of you have got behind so many causes that we've prioritized and given a platform to on this podcast, and this is one of those episodes. So if you've been looking and waiting to do something positive in the world, to feel like you're a part of the solution, then I want you to listen to this episode. I want you to share it with all your friends and family that are of the same energy and spirit, because this one's going to make a huge difference. Today I'm speaking to two incredible guests, Gary White and Matt Damon, who are co-founders of water.org and Water Equity. While everyone knows Matt as an actor and producer and screenwriter, in 2006 he founded H20 Africa Foundation to raise awareness about water initiatives on the continent. Matt's active participation in the work of water.org and Water Equity has positioned him as one of the world's experts on water and sanitation issues. Now, in 1991, Gary launched Water Partners, now the international NGO known as water.org. Today, he leads two organizations in creating and executing market-driven solutions to the global water crisis, driving innovations in the way water and sanitation projects are delivered and financed. Welcome to On Purpose, Matt Damon and Gary White. Matt and Gary, thank you so much for being here. And I know today we're talking about your book, The Worth of Water, our story of chasing solutions to the world's greatest challenge. I highly recommend everyone goes and grabs a copy of the book while you're listening or watching, but we will be diving into that and discussing it. Gary and Matt, thank you for being here. It's so good to see you.
Good to see you. Thank you for sharing your incredible platform with us too. This is really awesome. We appreciate it.
For sure. Thanks, Jay.
No, thank you for doing the work. I spent 3 years living as a monk in India after business school. And a lot of the work we did was around building sustainable villages. And a big part of that was making sure that clean water reached those places. So I have a personal affinity to the work that you're doing. And so when this came across my desk, I was, to be honest, just super enthusiastic and excited to talk about it. I'd love to start off from both of you individually telling me about what is the water crisis and water issue right now for those who are unaware or those that have kind of seen it that kind of think, oh yeah, like aren't there a lot of people dealing with that? And it's kind of been talked about for a while. I'd love to hear from both of your perspectives personally as to what you believe the issue is right now.
Well, if I can go ahead and jump in, if that's all right. It's so complex, it's kind of hard to distill it, but I'll give it a shot. I think that for us, we tend to think of the water crisis as something that's looming. We know that with climate change, water resources are getting more scarce, and that is a looming crisis, and it is important. We should be focused on that. But for 771 million people around the world today, the crisis is already upon them, right? They're the ones that when they woke up this morning, they didn't necessarily know where they were going to get water for the day. They didn't know how much time they were going to have to spend walking to collect that water. Or sometimes they have to buy it from these urban slum vendors who sell it for prices that are 10 to 15 times more than what they would pay if they had a water connection. So to them, the water crisis is a daily struggle to make sure that they have enough water in order to kind of live the day. And then when you're struggling day to day like that, that water crisis becomes like a family health crisis. It becomes an education crisis. It becomes lack of employment crisis because you're focused so much on getting water or paying for water that you're not in school, you're not healthy. And so it is basically something that's right now robbing hundreds of millions of people of their futures, because until you have water, nothing else matters.
Thank you for that, Gary. I really appreciate that. And the main thing that I'm hearing there is just, we think of people just not having water to drink, and then it's almost like, well, wait a minute, let's think about the act of getting water and what that takes away time from, i.e. their economic space, their home space, their family, the cooking, the feeding, everything that it expands out to. So thank you for that. Matt, I want to extend the same question to you as well. I'd love to hear about, for you personally, what you see as the issue.
So, well, I think Gary just did a pretty good summary there, but to follow on to that, I would just say that the effect of that, right, leaving aside the needless disease and death, right, that occurs when you don't have access to clean water and sanitation, because we're losing a million children under the age of 5, every year to completely preventable illness, right, and so that's its own tragedy, right, but when you look at the other effects of not having access, namely, because this disproportionately affects women and girls, so many girls aren't in school because they have to, for the sake of the survival of their families, be out looking for water every day. And so you can imagine what that does to the outcomes of their lives and to their potential. So it's not only this needless disease and suffering, it's also robbing people of their potential in ways that are really incalculable. And that was the very first water collection I went on. This is 16 years ago. And I was in Zambia in this really rural village, and it had been arranged for me to meet this girl when she got home from school, and we walked together to this well, and I talked to her. It was about a mile away. And in the course of our conversation, I said, "Are you going to live here for the rest of your life? Is this where you want to live?" And she got really shy, and she goes, no, I don't want to live here. I want to go to the big city. We're in this really rural area. She goes, I want to go to Lusaka. I want to be a nurse, right? And I totally just connected to her because I remembered being 14 and I was going to go to the big city with Ben Affleck, and we were going to be actors. We were going to New York, and that's like what a 14-year-old should be thinking about, right? They should be dreaming about their futures and the possibility that awaited them. And it wasn't until I got in the car and was driving away that I realized, had it not been for the foresight of someone to sink a bore well a mile from this kid's house, she wouldn't have been in school. She wouldn't dream of someday being a nurse and contributing to the economic engine of her country and helping people, being a frontline healthcare worker, all the things that, and living her dream, really, right? And so that was kind of an epiphany for me, and just the far-reaching effect of lack of access, because I really found that it underpinned everything. It undergirds every issue of extreme poverty. It touches all of them, and so the fact that nobody was really talking about it, and it was this vastly interesting and complex thing, massive problem. That was what first got me really interested.
Yeah. That's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I think there was a line in the book that really struck me, and you said that for that girl, water was life, and it was also a shot at a better life. And when you make that comparison of what you were thinking about at 14, what she's thinking about at 14, now I'm thinking about what I was thinking about at 14, and I would encourage our listeners and viewers right now, and Gary, I'm sure you've thought about this many times, but I'd like everyone who's listening or watching to think, what were you thinking about at 14? What was your choice that you were having to make? And you just realize how far off it is from someone who doesn't have access to water and clean water. And that just makes you stop, pause, and think and go, wow, like I may think I may not have this opportunity, or I may not have enough money to move to a city. But it's like here we're talking about not even having water and clean water to have access to, let alone all those choices. One thing that comes to mind, and I want to hear this from both of you, because this has been work that you've been doing for a number of years. This is not something that both of you have just got involved with, and it's your life's work. It's something you're truly passionate about. When you first saw the pain for both of you, when I hear those numbers, 771 million people, is that right? Did I get that number right, Gary? Like 771 million people, don't have access to clean water. When I'm hearing you shared the statistic just right now, we're losing 1 million children a year. When I'm hearing those numbers, they are so high, right? They're astronomical. I hear a lot of people, when they're exposed to that much pain, our natural inclination is to feel like we can't do anything. And our natural inclination is to feel a bit helpless, to feel sad, to feel disheartened. We feel like our empathy takes over and we go, well, what can I do? when you first saw that, what gave both of you the feeling, A, that you had to do something, but B, that what you do could make a difference? Let's start there, and then I'll follow up with another question. Let's start there, and Gary, you can go first again for us.
I came at it from a kind of an almost analytical perspective after I had that emotional response to it, right? So when I was in Guatemala as an undergraduate, in university doing a volunteer project there, just seeing this girl going and collecting this filthy water out of a drum, in the slums and walking back through this sewage-filled lane, that to me was one person, right? And then coming back and then learning that this was the story for hundreds of millions of people, I didn't get discouraged. I just could see that one person. And it's like, okay, if we can just kind of tackle this, even one person at a time, that was kind of the idealistic view of it. And so to me, what's been important about this journey that we kind of chronicle in the book is that, you have to have that end goal in mind. And that can be daunting to see that, our vision is that everyone in our lifetime, has access to safe water. And the challenge then becomes to match the scale of the solution to the scale of the problem, right? And I knew that philanthropy alone wasn't going to be that solution. Philanthropy has a role to play, but it was only by traveling and meeting women who were in these circumstances. I met a woman in India who had gone to a loan shark and was paying 150% interest to that loan shark just so she could build the toilet that she wanted. Other people who were doing this to, taking out loans for water connections at exorbitant rates, and then using those insights and saying, well, what if, we could turn the problem around and look at getting these people access to these small loans, what we now call water credit, that would then unleash them to get the solutions that they wanted. So I'm getting a bit ahead of myself here, but my point is that you just have to take the problem a step at a time and find a solution that's there, evolve it, get the insights, and move on. And that is the journey. And I think that's one of those kind of the subplots, I guess, of the book, is that any of these seemingly intractable big social problems do have solutions. If you're tenacious, if you innovate, and you work hard at it, you believe that we can get there.
Yeah, I would just say it's interesting because I had the exact same kind of reaction that Gary did, which was to say, okay, well, this is a complex issue and I don't understand it entirely, but I know that if I create an organization and raise money and start doing this direct impact work, building wells, right? I've seen the power of one well. So if 1,000 people have access to that one well, then I've helped 1,000 people. So why don't I start there? Why don't I just start moving forward? Why don't I start, as Gary said, take that first step? I don't know where the road is going, but I know I'm not getting there if I don't start walking. And so that was what, and so I did, I'm sure, incredibly naive things, and I didn't, and Gary, when we met in 2008, Gary, we talk about in the book, Gary led with all of his failures, right? Which is an incredibly attractive thing to me, because I think that is how, we can't be afraid of failure. We can't be afraid of, that can't stop our momentum, right? And it's how we learn, and it's how we grow. And so I knew that I had to partner with somebody who had a more sophisticated understanding of this issue, and I looked around for the best person available, and when they would not take my call, I found Gary. No. And that was really the one thing that I did in all of this work that was really, I'm really happy that I did that. It was really one of the smartest choices I've ever made in my life, and because of this water credit that Gary's talking about, which was this idea that came from his experience and his lifetime of experience of being in these communities and talking to people and understanding what life was like. He also understood that people in the poorest communities were paying for water. They were already paying for it, and in most cases paying way more than the middle class, way more than the people staying in the fancy hotels, who take it totally for granted. they weren't connected to the infrastructure, and as a result, their life was built around trying to get it. And so that insight led him to this hypothesis that these loans could actually be paid back quite easily. And that's what, 43.7 million people later, these loans have paid back at over 99%. So it's really, the book is really us trying to bring the story of these women, because, over 90% of our borrowers are women. And this kind of incredibly heroic women, like an individual, one by one, to the tune of millions and millions of them have paid these loans back at over 99%. And it's a beautiful story. And it's about philosophically how we feel about trying to help. It's not a kind of paternalistic, here's your solution, you're welcome. It's like, it's going into the communities and listening and then ultimately nudging a market towards people and letting them solve their own problems. And that's what we've seen happen now over 43 million times. And that's really cool.
Yeah, that's an incredible impact. And I love the way you're thinking about it, and the idea that there isn't just one-size-fits-all solution. It's not about throwing money at it. It's actually giving people the tools and the skills and the abilities, as you rightly said, to solve their own challenges so that they feel empowered in the process rather than dependent again on another outside source in another way. I mean, can you expand more for those who don't know how the lack of access to water impacts girls and women more than boys and men, and when you uncovered that, just tell us some of the reasons, because I don't know if everyone knows why or how that exists as a discrepancy, but also tell us some of the stories of some of the women that you've worked with as well.
Women and girls have been the ones in families that have been charged with collecting the water for their households, almost universally around the world. So they obviously have the greatest stake in this, and the greatest stake in trying to find a solution, and the greatest stake in ensuring that solution is sustainable. And that, to us, is like an insight. That's an observation. So it's like, well, how are we going to shape our solutions to meet their needs? And that's why, more than 85% of the borrowers under our water credit program are women. And so they're the ones that are repaying these loans at a 99% rate. And they are the ones that have even more incentive to make sure that if something breaks down, that it gets repaired. And I think that's one of the beauties of water credit as well, because oftentimes water projects do break down. Some of the statistics are that about half of the water projects fail after 5 years. And if you have access to an ecosystem of finance for water and sanitation, not just a one-and-done grant, but you can access a microloan to go get the solution that you need to fix your water tap or whatever. That is an important part of the whole model, and giving people, we talk about not necessarily seeing people living in poverty as a charity problem to be solved as much as a market to be served. And in order to kind of make the market work, we have to kind of nudge it towards the poor, which is what we do with water.org to help, get microfinance institutions that we partner with around the world to de-risk this for them, because it's a new thing to loan for water and toilets, and they're not quite sure how it works. So we can use our philanthropic capital to kind of help them do market research to design these loan products so that they can go out and make these 43 million loans that have happened so far. And that is kind of the concept. One way to just boil it down is with a story, right? A woman I met in the Philippines recently, her name was Lina Riza, and she was paying $60 a month to a water vendor who was selling water off the back of a truck, not even good quality water. And she took out a loan from one of our partners, and her loan repayment, her payment each month is $5. Her water bill each month is $5. So right there you see $50 back in her pocket. I mean, think about, when you're living in poverty, $50 is a lot of money. You can now work to get your kids into school. You can now afford the medicines that you might need for your family. You can invest in your future and build a future. And I think that's what we're trying to help people unlock. And that's whose stories, we're fortunate to be able to tell in the book.
Yeah, Gary, that what I find fascinating there, Matt, just before we come to you, that how have obviously those water vendors who are not selling the clean water or the best water, they've built up a certain level of authority and control in these markets, and like, how is that is that being dismantled as well by you doing this work? Like, where are those people, like, kind of, because I feel like that is so difficult. Obviously, if you haven't traveled to these countries, it's hard for people to understand how that even works. But that kind of like authority, influence, and power and control, how are they reacting to the dismantling of their economies? Because I'm sure that there's, conflict or pain back from that side. Like, how does that all work? Sorry if it's an ignorant question, but it's just...
No, not at all. And I think that, I guess one thing to understand is that even they are not making a fortune off of this system, right? It's just really expensive to find water, to put it in a truck, to buy the diesel, to drive the truck around and distribute it. I mean, the efficiency of that versus doing it through a pipe is incredible, right? So it's no surprise that they have to charge those amounts. And so, yes, there's going to be dislocations there with some of these vendors, but we haven't seen that crop up as a problem. It happens incrementally. Everybody in the world is used to kind of having to reinvent themselves. And so I think that, they might go on to other businesses, and you have tanker truck water that's needed for construction sites still, so they can kind of adjust to those types of markets.
Got it. That makes sense. And Matt, what about you? Was there a particular story? I mean, there's plenty in the book, but if there's someone that comes to mind right now where, you saw women being more negatively affected by this than men. Obviously, we got the answer of why from Gary, but is there a particular story that stands out or an experience in that direction?
About 11 years ago, we were in Haiti and at a we kind of were there for the christening of this new water system in this small village, and it was a real celebration. And amidst this celebration, I was introduced to a little girl who was 13, and I got her story, and her story was that she spent 3 to 4 hours every day collecting water, and she was very lucky because she could still be in school, but after school every day she went and she collected water. It took her 3 or 4 hours to get water for her family. So I say to this kid, I'm like, well, hey, I kind of joking say, now you have more time for homework, right? And she looks at me totally seriously, and she's like, I don't need more time to do homework. I'm the smartest kid in my class. And the way she said it, I knew she was telling me the truth. I was like, oh, I remember being 13, and like, I remember you in my class. You are the smartest person. And I said, all right, well, so what are you going to do with all this time that you just found, your newfound 4 hours a day? And she looked at me and she goes, I'm going to play.
Wow.
Yeah. And it like buckled me, because at the time, my oldest daughter was 13. And, so again, I felt that connection to this kid, and like, what else should a 13-year-old girl be thinking about? She should be thinking about playing. And that's, again, another one of those incalculable ways in which this is so pernicious, right? It just robs people of, in this case, it robs children of their childhoods, and then the potential of their adulthood. So yeah, it's things like that. And it's good for us. We go out about once a year. I go once a year. Gary goes a lot more often, but to kind of do these field visits and kind of connect to people and talk. And it's just because as these numbers are accelerating and we're kind of going from strength to strength with our work, which is really exciting. It's important to kind of remind ourselves of what it means, because it becomes numbers. 43.7 million people. I mean, what a number. But I'm still thinking about a girl I met 12 years ago, and so there's so many millions of these people that we'll never meet, but all of the stories are like that, and this is all about positive change.
Yeah, absolutely. As a follow-up to that, Matt, how is your work with those people affected your daughter too? Because I'm intrigued as to how, for her, seeing her father, be so service-focused and, giving energy to this, like, have you and Gary too, have you taken your kids out? Like, have you taken other children out and young people out? I'm just fascinated to hear how it feels when you're looking at someone your age, as opposed to both of you, obviously, as older men looking at younger people, but like, to have people looking at people their own age who have this mindset. I would love to hear some stories in that regard.
I talk about in the book my mom and how she took me as a teenager to places where I witnessed extreme poverty, and it was, and she didn't do any finger wagging at me or lecturing. She just let me absorb it, and it really impacted me. And so my kids our oldest is 23, and so she's out of the nest, and then we've got a 15, a 13, and an 11-year-old. And so I've taken the 23-year-old and I've taken our 15-year-old. We took her on a trip to the Philippines a few years ago, so she might have been 13 at the time. It's kind of different with each kid. You kind of see what age is this going to be positive? Is this going to influence you positively? And so I took my daughter and her best friend on a trip, and it was great. And it's letting them absorb with the kind of privilege that they have and they come from, and with this is all about where you're born, and you're born into a family. You don't have any say over it, and letting them try to put their lives in some context, which is how I felt. What I felt happened to me when my mother introduced me to a larger world. Suddenly, my life started to make more sense, right? And we're all trapped in these subjective realities and limited by them in some way. But I feel like travel and experience like this is kind of the greatest gift, because it helps at least to try to open us up.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful what you said about gauging when it's right for the individual, because there's no right age for any of them to have this experience, but really making it personalized, I think that makes a lot of sense. Gary, how about you? I'd love to hear your thoughts on this too.
I had a chance to take my daughter to Kenya and Ethiopia when she was about the same age as Matt's daughter when we were in the Philippines, and it's those types of experiences, you never know how they're going to reverberate later. Certainly, having that experience helped shape her. She's done some great volunteer work herself. She was a volunteer teacher, after she got out of college. And so I think some of the echoes of what she saw there and experienced there, the fortune that she has relative to many others in the world, has cropped up and will continue to.
Yeah, absolutely. I want you to explain, Gary. We've mentioned it a few times now, and of course you talk about it deeply in the book. For our audience, I'd love for you to explain exactly, in a simple way, how water credit works. And then Matt, I want you to talk about when you actually, you had a hard time accepting the idea behind water credit, and then what made you change your mind to it. Because I think that's what I find fascinating about this partnership between both of you, is that it wasn't just like this, we both love this, let's get on. It wasn't as simple as that. There's been a lot of planning, thought, intention behind this partnership between both of you. And I'd love to understand that. So Gary, if you can explain what it is, how it works, how it functions. We've obviously heard about some of the benefits and some elements of how it works, but I just want people to have a really clear idea. And then Matt, if you could tell us about your journey with how you changed your mind about it, that would be great.
For sure, I'd be happy to. I think it is rooted in that concept that people are already paying for water, right? The challenge is they don't have that $200, $300, $400 up front that they need to get a water connection, or to build a toilet at their home, or to install a hand pump or a water tank. And so they are struggling day to day. They can afford, $1 or $2 a day to get water, but they can't afford those large investments. And so what we saw that people were struggling with this. And so it's like, well, what if we could get microfinance institutions that are already operating around the world just to make loans to them? That makes complete sense, right? And then they would repay the loans. Well, we went knocking on the doors of a lot of those MFIs, microfinance institutions, and we kind of got the door slammed in our face. We're like, you guys don't understand microfinance. It's about income generating loans. We make loans for sewing machines or cows, because like by the end of the week, you're generating revenue because you're selling clothes or you're selling milk. This is the way it works. And we're like, but we believe it will work because it's going to help these people work at paying jobs, and that part of it. So it's like, we'll take on the risk, and this is why we raise philanthropic capital, because we need to make grants to a lot of these partners so that they can de-risk these types of loans, so that they can do the market research and understand what things are good to loan for, what technologies are good, which ones are not, to help them then launch lending businesses. Once they do, then they go to the capital markets and get the wholesale capital, then break it into millions of these micro loans. And so for a woman who gets that loan, literally overnight, she may have been spending 3 hours a day securing water the day before. She now has a water tap right at her home. And so literally the value is created overnight for her to go out and work at a paying job so that she can repay the loan. And now you fast forward, and these loans, $3.5 billion in loans have gone out, and they're repaid at a 99% rate. Over 85% of the borrowers live on less than $6 a day. About 30% live on less than $2 a day. And yet they keep coming forward to take out these loans because it makes sense for them. And they get the solutions that they want. And they don't feel like a charity case anymore. They feel like a market as a customer that's being served. And that's how the whole thing can work financially, so that we've now got the financial plumbing, if you will, that connects the global capital markets, where people can get a financial return on their investment, to women making a few dollars a day. Everybody wins, and we all move forward.
Yeah, Gary, thank you for that. Thanks for connecting the dots. I know we talked about, parts of that all over this conversation so far, but that was a really comprehensive breakdown, and I think that really helps because there's so many facets of that I think is new. Like, it's just so new. It's so alien to us, which just shows how big an issue it is and how much emphasis it needs. And Matt, tell us about when you first had the idea and you were skeptical slightly, I guess, and then you obviously have come around 180.
I was excited about it as I kind of drilled down on it and really worked it over with Gary and thought about it. But there was the aspect of it that was a little stomach turning, which was, wait a minute, we're going to make the poorest people on earth pay for, they're going to take these, we're going to loan them money. We're not going to, right? But philosophically, we're very aligned in this idea about, charity, quote unquote charity, and how, as you've like there's a paternalistic aspect to it. There's a kind of, here's your solution, you're welcome, arrogance about it, oftentimes. And what Gary's talking about is, with these loan programs, the dignity that come with them, right? And it's the dignity on the side of the borrower, but it's also on the side of the lender, kind of going, I see you as a human being. You're a customer. You know what I mean? We can do business. It's a very different relationship than you're just some problem I got to throw money at, right? And so I got over that pretty quickly. My stomach is like, oh God, market-based solutions. Oh no, what am I doing? But when I really thought about it, and it struck me as completely brilliant, and that's been borne out. I mean, we reached our first 1 million people in 2012, and now we're at 43 million. We're reaching however many million a quarter now, and it's just really accelerating, and that is illustrative of the demand, right? The demand for these loans, because they make sense, and it's not that paternalistic kind of charity solution that's going to be not working in 5 years, because nobody's going to take a loan out for something they don't want. Right? Yeah. They know what solution they need, and that's what they're going to take a loan out for, and it's going to work, and that's a sustainable solution for somebody, and it's also them solving their own problem, and it just took us to nudge the market towards them and let them claim their own agency and solve their own problem with dignity.
Yeah, I think that point on dignity is so powerful and so important. I know exactly what you mean. It takes a while to get around it because you're like, wait a minute, are we charging people for, like how does this work? But
yeah, like if you're going across the desert and you see somebody, thirsty, and then you sell them a bottle of water, like, it doesn't feel right,
Yeah. But you're saying, as you rightly said, that from a long-term perspective and from a sustainability perspective, this person's now building confidence. They're building, as you said, a sense of agency. They're feeling empowered. They're feeling a sense of assurance that they are growing through this journey as well, and they're able to, as you said, loan it for things that are important to them. Tell me about this partnership for change that you both have, because I think, I wonder whether when both of you got passionate, because as far as I know, you got passionate independently and then of course connected with each other about this cause. When you're looking for a partnership for change, I think that can, take a lot of time, effort, patience. There's so many things that need to align. If there are people in our community audience thinking right now, like, oh, I'd love to have someone else in my life that I could work with passionately about this, or I would love to find someone, what are some of the things that they should look for? Matt, we obviously know Gary was your second choice, so we'll start with what you're looking for in your first choice. And Gary, I'm sure you had some other picks too. So, but no, I would love to know what you were looking for in a partner. Were you even looking, or was it just so like, oh wow, I'm so grateful that I bumped into someone who has this passion? From both of your perspectives, I'd love to hear how you approach this, because making a change is not easy. It's a long journey. You need different skill sets and different networks and communities. And so I often think that a lot of people say, oh yeah, when I find someone, then I can do something. You were both independently. I mean, Gary, you started in your college days, right? So I want to hear about how it was in the search of a partner, the pursuit of the partner, and then what you actually looked for and why it was a good fit.
Well, I was looking for the expert in the space, and that Gary's name was the name that kept coming up. And in getting to know him, it was just clear why. And I mean, he's just brilliant. And this water credit innovation is a really big deal. And he arrived at that through his intelligence, but also through his tenacity. So he was a logical partner for me. Exactly what I was looking for. I kind of woke up in my late 20s with this very bizarre reality of being a celebrity, and wanted to find ways to do something good with that. And I needed help, and I wanted to be effective. I didn't want to it wasn't about soothing my own, ego. It was about really trying to do something that was helpful. And I think just in meeting Gary, we joined our organizations, and he had water partners at that point for 20 years and instantly gave up the title of water partners for water.org. And I think that showed the humility, the lack of ego, right? And I think we both came at it from that perspective. It was never about us or about ego. It was really about how can we be most effective, right? And we're really aligned in that way. And in that sense, it's just the perfect partner for me.
That's beautiful. You made up for it, Matt. That was very heartfelt, and no, genuinely, that's so wonderful to hear. I love hearing about that, and the quality of humility, and like you said, being able to put aside water partners and start something on the water.org. That's fantastic. Gary, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think the serendipity of it that's definitely at play, allowing our paths to cross. But certainly, I had been heads down on this project. problem and had been trying to innovate, and this whole concept of coming at it from initially I was very much about like, let's go drill wells and let's raise a lot of money and give it away, but quickly realized that there was never going to be enough, right? And so this concept of lighting a candle versus cursing the darkness is kind of where I came at it from. And so I was trying to find those ways to do that, and we were catching on. The water credit was like, it wasn't like gangbusters yet, but we knew that we kind of had a tiger by the tail in terms of how this could scale. But I'm an engineer. Like, what do I know about storytelling? What do I know about like moving an audience? What do I know about like having a big voice in this? Because we were ready for that. Because we had a certain amount of humility until that point, and then it's like, now we got to tell the story. And then to be able to get introduced to and cross paths with an incredible storyteller that Matt is, and seeing that firsthand, it just was it was one of those things. 1 + 1 = 3 for sure. And it seemed that way at first for both of us, but then as we got to know each other kind of at a deeper level, our philosophies and our upbringings and our experiences, it's just like, okay, I can really trust this guy. I think we both felt that from both directions. And once you have that trust and you have everything set in motion, it's kind of a table set for you, and you bring those relative strengths. I can certainly say Matt has evolved more as a water expert than I have as an actor. But
very low bar to clear that.
But what also he didn't tell you earlier is I went to Ben Affleck first. He turned me down flat, and then I ended up with Matt.
I love it. You've both been so generous with your time. I have one last question, which is just how people can support. Of course, I highly recommend everyone goes and grabs a copy of the book, The Worth of Water, Our Story of Chasing Solutions to the World's Greatest Challenge. It will be in the comments, the caption, the bio, the link in the podcast. You can go and order the book right now. But Gary, you used a water metaphor at the end of the chapter called The Wave, and you said, to end the crisis, we need a wave. I would love to know how my community can be a part of that wave, how I can be a part of that wave. What are the opportunities and ways people can get involved? Because I think ultimately there's going to be no one who reads the book that isn't moved by the work, who everything you've shared today, I think will want to move people into action. How can people support? That's the last question I want to ask you, because I know I'm mindful of your time as well.
That's a great question. And, we do need that support. This is such a big crisis. It's all hands on deck. And there are a number of ways. Of course, as authors, Matt and I are donating all of our fees back to water.org for the book. So every time somebody buys the book, you are helping people get access to safe water. If the book moves you, take it to your book club. Spread the word that way. Pass the book on to someone else, because it is these individual acts of people who provide that funding that we need so that these individual stories that are in the book can come to life. That is what it's going to take from all of us. And to the extent that you're using your voice, Jay, to help make this happen, we greatly appreciate that.
Absolutely.
No, I would love to visit one of the places with you one day. I think it would be a really beautiful experience for me and my team too. So
we'd love to have you.
Yeah, that'd be really beautiful. That'd be wonderful to do. So, Matt, did you want to add anything to everything that Gary just said of how anyone can get involved, or anything that comes to your mind or heart?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's $5 to bring a person clean water for life, and so it's not, yeah, I know it's crazy, but that's what it is, and the book obviously, will all the our money goes towards that. So yeah, and please share the story and talk about it. It's a really fascinating issue, I promise, if you want to engage with it and try to kind of move the needle, because it's, again, so hard for us to relate, because water is in such abundance for us.
Yeah, and as we were saying on purpose, it's like when we're part of the solution, the view of the problem changes, right? When you see these stories, and that's why I love what Gary and Matt have done here. When you read these stories and you hear these stories, and when you share the book with people and you get to see that change does work, that there are positive stories, that we do live in a world that has challenges and issues, but that $5 could make a difference to someone's daily life and how they feel when they wake up in the morning, and that makes a difference. Like, that has a ripple effect, and I think we need to tell these stories more, because we can get caught up in the stories of we can't do anything and we are helpless. But Gary and Matt, I'm so grateful that you've given us a platform through which we can all feel like we're having an impact. Again, I highly recommend everyone grab the book. As you said, all proceeds from the book go towards all the amazing work. And I thank you both for taking the time and giving me your energy, and look forward to continuing to support you guys. So thank you so much for what you're doing. It's so powerful.
Really appreciate it.
Thanks, John.
Take care. Thank you so much. Everyone who's been listening or watching, make sure you share this interview, pass it along, tag us all on social media, letting us know what's resonated with you, what's connected with you. Share it. When you order the book, tag me to let me know you've ordered it so that I can reshare that across social media as well. And thank you all.